When I first moved to Greece, I felt isolated and out of place. Everything was unfamiliar, and I often wondered if I'd ever feel at home. One afternoon, my friendly neighbor Maria knocked on my door with a warm smile. She handed me a colorful flyer for a community festival happening that weekend. "You should come," she said encouragingly. "It's a great way to meet people." Despite my nerves and doubts, I decided to go. As I arrived, I was overwhelmed by the vibrant scene. The park was alive with music, delicious aromas from food stands, and the joyful chatter of people. I took a deep breath and made my way to a booth showcasing food from my homeland. The volunteers there greeted me kindly, and as I talked to visitors about the dishes, I felt a sense of pride and connection. Seeing their genuine interest reminded me that I had something valuable to share. Later, I found myself captivated by a lively group of dancers performing traditional music from another culture. A few dancers noticed me watching and invited me to join in. Though hesitant at first, I accepted, and to my surprise, I quickly found myself laughing and moving in sync with people I had just met. Their warmth and openness made me feel welcomed. By the end of the festival, I realized something important. This community, despite its differences from what I knew, could truly feel like home. The supportive atmosphere, the shared laughter, and the genuine interest people showed in each other's cultures left me feeling hopeful. Meeting new people and embracing our differences created a bond that I had been longing for, and I knew I was on the path to finding belonging. When I moved into my new apartment, everything felt overwhelming. I didn't know anyone, I struggled to understand the local language, and I wasn't sure if I belonged. Most days, I stayed inside, feeling shy and unsure of how to meet people. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I hesitated before opening it and was surprised to see an older woman standing there, holding a plate of cookies. She smiled warmly and said something simple that I could understand: "Welcome." She introduced herself as Maria, my neighbor from across the hall. Maria gestured to the cookies, encouraging me to take one. I invited her in with a smile, and we sat together at my small kitchen table. Our conversation was slow, with lots of gestures and a mix of words from both of our languages. I showed her a photo of my family back home, and she told me about her children, who had grown up in this building. Before leaving, Maria placed her hand gently on mine and said, "If you need anything, I'm just next door." That moment of kindness stayed with me. It was the first time I felt seen and cared for in this unfamiliar place. From that day on, Maria would wave hello in the hallway, and little by little, I felt braver about talking to other neighbors. Her simple gesture, a plate of cookies and an open heart, made me realize that connection can start small, but mean so much.
When I first arrived in my new city, everything felt like a maze. I didn't speak the local language well, and asking for help was intimidating. One day, I needed to find books to practice the language and access the internet, so I decided to visit the local library. Walking into the large, quiet building, I felt out of place. I didn't know where to go or whom to ask. I approached the front desk nervously and tried to explain what I needed, but my words came out mixed. The librarian, a kind woman with glasses and a patient smile, noticed my struggle. Instead of dismissing me, she gently gestured for me to follow her. She guided me to the language learning section and pointed to books that could help me. Using simple words and even drawing little pictures, she showed me how to access the computers and log onto the library system. Her patience gave me confidence, and I managed to smile and thank her. Before I left, the librarian handed me a small flyer with information about free language classes happening at the library. Come, she said, pointing to the date. I felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over me. That day, I realized that help is always there if we are brave enough to ask for it. The librarian's kindness not only helped me access the service I needed, but also gave me hope that this new place could become a home.
When I heard about the local food fair, I wasn't sure what to bring. Should I talk about my culture or share something personal? In the end, I chose to cook my grandmother's traditional dish, a simple but beloved meal from my homeland. On the day of the fair, I nervously set up my table with a pot of food and some homemade bread. The smell of spices and fresh dishes filled the air as people wandered by, curious. A woman stopped and asked, "What's this?" Though my words weren't perfect, I told her the story behind the dish, how my grandmother would cook it for us every Sunday, bringing the family together. Soon, more people gathered, tasting the food and smiling. "This is delicious," someone said, and I felt a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. Others began sharing their own stories about family recipes, music, and traditions from their own lives. That day, I realized how food could build bridges. I didn't just share a recipe, I shared a piece of my home. When someone said, "Thank you for sharing this with us," I knew I was no longer just an outsider, but a part of something bigger. When I was asked to help at the community kitchen, I hesitated. I didn't have much experience volunteering, and I wasn't sure if my limited language skills would make it difficult. But I missed feeling useful, so I decided to give it a try. On my first day, I walked into a busy kitchen where everyone seemed to know what they were doing. A woman named Sarah welcomed me warmly and handed me an apron. She smiled and pointed me toward a pile of vegetables to chop. "Together," she said simply, and I nodded, grateful for her patience. As I worked, I listened to the chatter around me. At first, I stayed quiet, but then one of the volunteers asked about my home country and what kind of food we cooked there. Slowly, I shared stories about dishes my family made, and they listened with interest. By the end of the shift, I felt more relaxed, laughing as we cleaned up together. Over time, the kitchen became my safe space. I learned new skills, improved my language bit by bit, and built friendships. Most importantly, I felt like I belonged. I wasn't just receiving help. I was giving back, and that gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Looking back, taking that first step into the kitchen changed everything. It reminded me that being part of a community starts with showing up, even when it feels intimidating.
When I first moved to this new country, I felt invisible. I spent most days alone at home, missing my family and the familiar sounds of my hometown. I often watched people through my window, busy, connected, and happy, while I felt isolated and forgotten. One afternoon, I saw a flyer on a bulletin board near the market: "Join our sewing club, all are welcome." I hesitated. I hadn't sewn in years, and I worried I wouldn't understand anyone, but something inside me said I had to try. The next day, I walked into a small room filled with women chatting and laughing. I froze in the doorway, but an older woman named Clara noticed me. She waved me over and said kindly, "Come, sit here, you'll love it." She handed me a needle and fabric, and together, we worked quietly at first. Slowly, the women asked me simple questions about myself, where I was from, what I liked to do, and I found the courage to share. Week after week, the sewing club became my safe place. We stitched, talked, and even learned words from each other's languages. The laughter we shared made the room feel warmer than anywhere I'd been in a long time. That club gave me more than something to do, it gave me a community. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. I realized that reaching out, even when it feels scary, can lead to the connections we need the most.
For months, I had seen the posters at the community center advertising a weekly dance class. Each time I passed them, I thought, I'm too old for that. What if I embarrass myself? But deep down, I missed being active and meeting new people. One day, a woman at the center noticed me reading the poster. "You should come," she said brightly. I tried to protest, explaining I wasn't a dancer, but she laughed and said, "Neither are most of us. It's just for fun." Her words stayed with me, and the next week, I found myself standing nervously at the doorway to the dance hall. The room was filled with music and smiling faces. I felt out of place at first, but the instructor welcomed me warmly and paired me with another beginner. "Just follow the rhythm," she said, and I slowly joined in. At first, my movements were clumsy, and I felt self-conscious, but the laughter and encouragement from the group eased my nerves. By the end of the class, I was smiling and moving freely. It wasn't perfect, but it felt good. Week after week, I grew more confident, and the class became a highlight of my routine. Looking back, I'm so glad I didn't let fear hold me back. Stepping into that dance class reminded me that it's never too late to try something new, and that the hardest step is often just showing up. It started with a knock on my door. When I opened it, I saw my new neighbor, Amina, holding a piece of paper with a list written in shaky handwriting. She pointed to it and looked at me, confused. I realized she needed help finding the grocery store. Although we didn't share a language, I smiled and motioned for her to wait. I grabbed my coat and gestured that I would walk with her. Along the way, we exchanged a few words and gestures. I learned that she had recently arrived from a distant country, and everything here felt overwhelming for her. At the store, I showed her where to find items on her list, pointing and using simple words. She nodded, smiling more as she grew more confident. At one point, she placed a jar of unfamiliar spices into my cart and mimed how to cook with them. We both laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the world was smaller. When we got back, Amina handed me a small bag from her kitchen the next day, spices and instructions for a dish from her home. That simple exchange grew into a friendship. Helping her that day taught me that kindness doesn't need perfect words, it just needs effort. Amina's gratitude and willingness to share her culture enriched my life as much as I helped her settle into her new one. When I signed up for the digital storytelling workshop at the community center, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. I had barely used a smartphone, let alone a computer to create something. But I had always loved telling stories, so I decided to give it a try. Walking into the room, I felt intimidated. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing, typing away confidently. The instructor, seeing my hesitation, came over and smiled. "Don't worry," she said, "we'll take it step by step." That reassurance gave me the courage to sit down and open the laptop in front of me. The first task was to write a short story from our lives. I hesitated, unsure of how to begin, but the instructor reminded us that even small moments can make powerful stories. I wrote about a childhood memory, and before I knew it, words started flowing. Next came adding images and recording my voice. It felt strange hearing myself speak, but as I pieced everything together, I saw my story come to life on the screen. When I played it back for the group, the smiles and kind words from others filled me with pride. By the end of the workshop, I felt like I had unlocked a new world. Learning digital skills wasn't just about using technology, it was about finding a new way to share who I am. It reminded me that it's never too late to learn something new, and that taking the first step is always the hardest. Our neighborhood park had become an empty, neglected space. The grass was overgrown, the playground was worn down, and few people ever visited. When I heard about a project to clean it up and plant a community garden, I was hesitant to join. I don't know much about gardening, I thought, but I signed up anyway, hoping to help in some way. On the first day, I showed up to see neighbors of all ages gathered with tools, gloves, and plants. A group leader assigned me to help clear out weeds. At first, it felt like slow, hard work, but as we talked and laughed together, the time passed quickly. As the days went on, I learned how to plant flowers, build small garden beds, and even how to design spaces for kids to play. A young woman taught me tips for keeping the soil healthy, and I shared with her a trick I remembered from my father about growing herbs. When the project was finished, the park looked transformed. Families began visiting, children played on the swings, and the garden became a peaceful spot for everyone. One day, I saw a group of women sitting on a bench I had helped paint, chatting and enjoying the sunshine. It made me realize that the work we did wasn't just about plants or paint, it was about creating a space where people could come together. That project taught me that even small efforts can make a big difference. And in helping my community grow, I felt more rooted in it, too. When I saw the flyer for a community forum on human rights, I hesitated to go. I wasn't sure if my voice would matter, or if I had anything valuable to add. But the topic, gender equality, was something I cared deeply about, so I decided to attend. The room was filled with people of all ages and backgrounds. At first, I stayed quiet, listening as others shared their experiences and opinions. A young woman spoke about the challenges she faced at work, and an older man talked about how his daughter inspired him to advocate for equal opportunities. Their stories resonated with me, and before I realized it, I had raised my hand. I shared my own story about growing up in a society where women were often expected to stay silent. I spoke about the barriers I had faced and how I had worked to overcome them. My voice trembled at first, but the nods and encouraging smiles from the audience gave me confidence to continue. After I finished, a woman approached me during the break. "Your story was so powerful," she said. "It reminded me of my grandmother's struggles, but also her strength." Her words made me realize that sharing my experiences wasn't just about me, it was about inspiring others and sparking change. That conversation gave me a new sense of purpose. Engaging in these discussions reminded me that even small voices can create ripples, and that standing up for what you believe in can connect us all in powerful ways. For years, I believed that slowing down was just a part of getting older. I stopped doing many of the activities I once enjoyed, convincing myself that they weren't meant for someone my age. But one morning, as I sat by the window watching the sunrise, I felt a spark of curiosity. What if I started walking every morning? I thought. The first day, I laced up my old sneakers and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the streets were quiet. At first, it felt strange to be out walking for no particular reason, but soon I began noticing small details: the sound of birds singing, the way the light hit the trees, the warmth of the sun on my face. Each day, my walks grew longer, and soon I started seeing familiar faces. A neighbor with a friendly dog waved to me every morning. A group of women doing yoga in the park invited me to join them. Bit by bit, my mornings became more than just exercise. They became moments of connection and joy. I realized that staying active wasn't just about physical health. It was about feeling alive and engaged with the world around me. My walks gave me a sense of routine, purpose, and even community. Looking back, I can't believe how much I gained from such a simple decision to step outside.